Hey, there we go. Keith, Phyllis, Chris, Lynn, Di Manuel is on his way. Two dads in the lab trying to be 2% better here on a Friday where we drop our live show here, live in the lab with Keith, Phyllis. But the Friday show is always with the two dads. And I know we got a third guy coming, Di. He's making his way across the mountains there in Vancouver. But today I'm really excited because this guy has been pretty busy. He's a business transformation expert, and I'm thinking he's also a life transformation expert.
I don't know about that, but we'll see. I guess we'll see from the conversations.
Dude, when you're putting in your title, you're a business transformation expert. What's there is shaking time, Manuel. There he is. There he is.
Little glitches over here in this part of the world, but good to be here. Hi, Christopher. Nice to meet you in person or face to face.
Nice to meet
guess.
you as well. Yeah, you know what? This is as in person as probably most people will ever get to me, so it works.
Awesome.
Because your 7 kids are guarding you?
When you have 7 kids, a trip to the grocery store is like a trip to Disney. So pretty much that tells you what my schedule's like.
Yeah. So it's funny because I don't know if you saw on my little post there on LinkedIn, but I actually subtly invited another friend of the lab, a friend of Keith and Di's, Chad Hufford. Didn't Chad have 7 kids too?
Chad's got a boatload too. Yeah.
Or it's 5 or 6.
It's like, you guys, man, you got a football team between the two of you.
You get to a certain point and you just quit counting, I think. It was like,
is that what it is? Is that what it is? Yeah. Jeez. So
wait, I gotta ask, is every sperm sacred or what? I'm just thinking Monty Python. That's all I can keep thinking.
I love it.
That's all I keep thinking. And anyways, it's just 7. Oh my gosh. I got to 2 and I honestly used to think I was going to have 5, but after I had 2, I was like, I'm good, man. I'm good. What happened to you though, Christopher?
7 was not the plan. I will tell you that. We were not planning on 7. We thought we had 1 and we went, I don't want to have just 1. So we'll have 2. And then it was, I guess we're having 3. And then it was 4. And then it was 5. And then 6. And then 7. And now people go, are you done? And I go, I'm not answering that question because the second I answer it, that's when another one's on the way. So I just say, we'll see.
Any twins?
No twins. Oldest is 13.
Wow. Dude. Amongst men, Keith and Di could crack all kinds of jokes with you. So I know we're just getting used to each other here. So maybe we're going to subtly get into those jokes, but we don't learn our lesson after 4 or 5 or 6 or.
I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it for the world though. I really
love
wouldn't.
it.
I think in the beginning I struggled with it more because I was like, man, this is like a lot. And now I look at it and go, I love it. I won't say I love every minute of it. There are definitely minutes that I go, this minute in particular is not a loving it minute, but I would say for the most part, it's fantastic. It's fantastic.
Chris, we make fun of the whole thing. And I know you have 7 beautiful children that love you love very much. And that one day we'll hear this. Kids, we make light of all this because one day, kids, you might go down the same path as dad. But because admittedly, Dyer, we don't meet a lot of fathers that have 7 children. And it opens up a whole set of conversations. So when Chris came across the podcast world, I was like, yeah, I looked at his profile on LinkedIn and on the socials, Chris, and on the business side, very interesting career you've had. I was like, oh, I could talk to the guy on the business side of things. But then when I saw on the tagline, dad of 7 kids, I was like, oh, you got to come and hang out with Di now because I'm really curious about life with 7 children.
I'm an open book, so you can, at least for the most part, my LinkedIn audience and YouTube audience, we'll see. So I won't go into too many details, but for the most part, I'm an open book.
Well, let's talk about the struggle with the juggle first and foremost. All right.
Yeah.
So I hear people talk about work-life balance all the time, and I'm like, gosh, it's like the world of Oz. You'll never get there. And there's no place like home. And like literally, I don't believe in work-life balance, but I do believe that we can find harmony between the 2 points. Yeah. But that takes intention. And I got to understand, like, how do you and your partner manage 7, right? To also be able to create time for yourselves individually as well as a couple. So there's a whole lot of questions in that one question, but take that any way you want, Christopher.
I would say there's a couple things that stand out for me. So one is you used a word I use a lot, intention. So I actually wrote a book. I haven't published it yet. It's called Relentless Intention, which is all about how intentional we have to be with our time. And so if you look at my schedule, I know what I have to do. I schedule my time. I'm constantly making priority decisions around, if I say no to this, I'm saying yes to this. If I say yes to this, what am I saying no to? And constantly evaluating the trade-offs with that. So that is a large part of it, which is why when people go, oh, are you doing this? I'm like, no, because the no I would have to say yes to that is actually less important type of thing. So that's a big part of it. I think the other thing though, that in my years of doing this, that has been a shift is I've really learned how much value comes from sacrifice. And so
Mm,
before recognizing that actually it used to be, how do I still think about me? And I think there's a way to still do that in a healthy way. But for me, going, you know what, actually, there's so much more fulfillment in going, how do I actually make myself more available to my spouse
mm,
and my kids? And how am I actually more generous with that instead of going, how am I always making sure I'm carving out time for me? So it's actually almost a reverse engineering of, if I
mhm.
put them first, then I make sure that happens. And interestingly, it always comes, it's like an abundance mindset. I never really seem to run out. And it's almost like the more I give, the more they give back and go, what do you need? And it's like, I just will give you more. And some of it's just being flexible. Let me tell you, with 7, when I hear people go, you got to do this and you got to be at this, and I'm like, yeah, I would stress myself out. I don't have any hair to lose, but I would just lose whatever's left on my face if I was trying to make sure everything always went according to plan, because it just doesn't. And that's just life.
It's
I love it.
it's just a life. So not only, yeah, spontaneity in many ways must be intentional as well. And I know that's full of contrasts, but you got to pick your moments, Chris.
Yeah.
Whether it's with the kids or whether it's with your partner, it's let's go. It's all
Yeah,
right
the
now.
opportunity is like right here, right now. So we could sit and try and think about it and over engineer it or over plan it, or we could just go, it's go, say la vie. Let's seize the day because we've got the
Mm.
chance. So let's take all advantage that we can.
It's interesting, Di, because I never thought about it the way that Chris did. But when you and I first met, you talked to me how you look at your calendar at the end of the week and make sure that your colors are aligned to make sure that that the colors weight in the area of what's most important to you, your heart, your emotion, your connection with your family. Now, when I think about what Chris just explained, it makes complete sense to me where you're starting your week off going, okay, I got to make sure I'm spending time with my partner, my kids, and then everything else happens after that. And man, I can see how fulfilling your life actually is because you don't have really a choice but to do just what you do. 'Cause if you didn't, no, I'm serious. Because if you didn't, you
Yeah.
actually wouldn't see anybody else.
No. No. And
You
I think
wouldn't.
that's where, even I'm relentlessly intentional about the time I spend with people who aren't my family as well.
Mm.
And scheduling time and going, it is important for me to have relationships outside of my kids and wife, but I have to plan for that. And I have to seize the moments when they come and also be like, how do I make sure I don't go too long without staying connected? And I've had to get wildly creative, which fortunately I'm a total tech head. So for me, it's, I might just have to think about this differently. When a friend says, hey, do you want to go to the Boundary Waters for a week? I'm like, no, but what if we did this instead? Like, this might be a different way to approach what traditionally I might have done.
Die.
I think it's great, and I like just keeps coming to mind because as much as we talk about this sort of commitment management piece, which I love, by the way, it's like wherever our attention goes, our energy flows, and what better way to plan out a week than blocking in a calendar? And I
Yep.
appreciate the discipline that takes. And all I can think though is when we talk about dividing time, I'm like, how do you make it so you can connect with 7 kids? Do you know what I mean? Like in a week to week, day to day, like I know my own 2 daughters. Hey, they need stuff. They need
Yep.
dad time. They need mom time. And I'm like, we just got 2, so at least we can split the difference. But how the heck do you and your partner do it? Like, I just, my goodness, because also all those different ages. Listen, I can tell you, every age was a different need, right? A
Yeah.
different thing that they required. And holy smokes, you've got the gamut.
So there's 2 things that I've found have worked really well. It's funny, somebody actually asked me this week. And so it's fresh on my mind.
Cool.
And one of the things is, and I just do this with life in general, is how can I accomplish multiple things by doing a single activity?
I
So a lot of times I'm looking at efficiency and going, is there something I can do that I know will connect with all of them? And
Mhm.
that, again, going back to sacrifice, means me saying, what do they care about? Not what do I care about and how do I force them to come to me? So, as a good example, they love watching some of these cheesy YouTubers who do Minecraft. I don't really get it. I
Yep.
used to be a gamer. I know enough about Minecraft, but they love it. And so,
Yeah.
me learning to play Minecraft, spending time with them, they're just like, dad loves being with us on this. And they all can unify around that. And it's like, okay, I can work with one of
Nice.
you and I meet all of your needs. But then I think going back to something you said, Keith, earlier, was being able to seize the moment. I am always watching, and it's taken a lot of time to get them
Mm.
to know them personally, each of their kind of nuances and needs. And I'm watching all the time to look for those opportunities when I go, they need dad right now. Like,
Yeah.
you need dad right now.
Yes.
And I see that. And so I'm going to stop whatever it is I'm doing and go spend time with you without everybody else. And that's a lot of acrobatics with my wife. And but we figure it out, and every day is a new day, that's for sure.
One of the conversations that have come through the lab here on Two Dads in a Lab trying to be 2% better, Chris, is screens and screen
Yeah.
time.
Yep.
You're a tech guy. I'm assuming that you have been around many screens and you've been around a lot of technology in your life.
Yeah.
How have you introduced screen time? How do you manage it with the kids? What's some of the philosophies of the Lynn household with screens?
So a lot of it, you'll hear things all over the parenting mat. Never give your kids a screen. Always give. I don't think those extremes really are terribly helpful, and they're just not practical. So a lot of this has been really treating my kids like the mature human beings they are, and having open conversations with them, and then setting reasonable boundaries. So our kids have iPads. They don't have smartphones, but they have iPads. But we've been really intentional in working with them around the parental controls that we set up. I don't just do it and then tell them what it is. We talk about, hey, what are the things that are appropriate for where you are right now? Why is this important to you? I remember when we turned on the social aspect of Minecraft, we had a family discussion with all the kids about it, about what were they really hoping to accomplish with this, and what kind of risks might you need to watch out for, and how can daddy be involved in that along the way, so that we can keep saying, is this appropriate? Is it not? Is anything happening that I need to know about? And we've just created that environment where we're just really open and talk about things. And there's plenty of times where we go, devices are off. Like, they're off. When we go upstairs after dinner and hang out, there's no devices. There's no bringing that stuff up. We're just going to spend time together as human beings.
Create some clear boundaries, haven't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Die.
Yeah, it's boundaries, man. I can just say, like, each daughter is its own personality. So I
Yeah.
can imagine you've got 7 little personalities to manage. And I think I've already picked up on the vibe, because you said earlier, like, going to the grocery store is like going to Disneyland. It's like a full family experience, and quite literally a caravan experience. So what is it like? How do you manage all the personalities and those needs? Because I imagine everyone's got an opinion when it's like, hey, we're going out tonight. What does everybody want to do? Do you even open up with that kind of question? Or do you go like, you have 2 choices, this or this, and majority rules? Like, how do you do it? Is it a voting system? What?
I don't know that it's necessarily a voting system, and I don't know that there's a universal like SOP for how we do it. It's a lot of times it's my wife and I doing a risk assessment around what really is the risk associated with this, and being really intentional about how much risk is there. If there's not a lot of risk, if it's going to be easy enough, we can give you the flexibility. And we have different rules based on where they are in age. Like, you're 13, your rules are different than your 7-year-old sister. And even when they're like, that's not fair, then we talk about it. Instead of just going, mommy and daddy said, let's have a conversation about why we did that. And if you think it should be different, I'm open to hearing your perspective on it, but actually challenging them to think critically about it. It's actually funny. It may sound like so obvious, but it's funny how often I think about this, because I had this conversation with my son the other day where he was talking about the way he was playing Minecraft, and I just sat and talked with him about, but let's talk about why you do that, and what kind of behaviors is this instilling in you? And he started thinking and vocalizing it, and he got to the end and goes, I don't think I should do that anymore. And I was like, interesting, you came to that conclusion. I feel the same way, but it's great that you came to that conclusion on your own. And so that kind of Socratic engagement, and I think sometimes we forget, kids are a lot sharper than we often give them credit for. It's easy to think of them as, oh, they're just little, they don't understand anything. And I'm like, man, I can have some deep conversations with my kids, and they'll really engage and think critically. And I think we don't always give them enough credit.
Yeah, I don't think we do give kids enough credit for the most part. You said yourself at the beginning of our conversation, Chris, you speak to your children probably very similar to, it sounds like probably like I do, or even as I've gotten to know Di, like he does with his kids. They're human beings like you or I. What you have on them is just some wisdom.
Yeah.
Like, that's really it, right? But yet, for the longest time, there was that I'm the parent, and I'm older than both you guys, so I would come being raised probably from that militaristic, autocratic
Oh yeah.
parent. So I've had to
Yeah.
learn not that.
I did too. I did too, because there was a lot of like, this is just how it is, and it's because I
Yes.
said so. And it's not that you're giving up your authority. My
Oh,
kids still, they know if daddy says
yes.
no, they're
Yes.
like, daddy said. So it's not about becoming their best friend. It's just about being able to foster that relationship where you can actually talk and be seen and respected as an authority
Respect it.
figure while
Yes.
still respecting and appreciating them for who they are. And some of it I've even found is, as an adult, some of the stuff they talk about, because of where we are in our life journey, we look at it and go, that's dumb. Like, you're upset that somebody broke your Minecraft house. Like, that, get over it. You'll rebuild it. But I've actually had to learn to go, you know what? To a 6-year-old, that's a big deal. That's a huge deal. They spent
Mhm.
their time. And even though I don't understand it, I can put myself in their shoes and go, you know what? If I were 6, I'd be pretty crushed by that. And being able to relate with that on a level where they go, you know what? You're showing me respect, that you appreciate what I'm going through, even though I know, daddy, you don't understand it the same way I do, but you're showing that genuine care for me. It changes the conversation.
I,
Empathy is an incredible emotion, and to see you instilling that, and or I should say, nurturing that in your own children by role modeling and mentoring them with it, I think that's just awesome. I just think about the generation we want to give the keys to. It's like, hey, you get the keys to the car now, because I think you're going to do a lot better than our generation's done driving this boat that we call life.
Yeah.
And so I look at this next generation, and I feel a lot of positivity towards them taking over, right? Like, it's just,
Yeah.
it's incredible how astute they are, but also with the access to technology and great role modeling like you're doing, Christopher. So I gotta say, it's really awesome to hear. And I was wondering, like, what other habits? Clearly, that intentional time blocking, commitment management has been a big habit that's allowed you to obviously be a
Yeah.
great father to 7 kids, and meanwhile still an amazing partner in life with your wife. But what other little habits would you say are instrumental that's allowed you to create the space to do that?
In terms of best practices, it really is the intention
Mhm.
about it and the sacrifice. I think those are a big part of it. I think some of the things that just are more of a mindset thing that have really made a difference is like just this deep held belief that my kids are intrinsically valuable,
Mhm.
even if they're different, even if I may not necessarily understand them, but actually seeing that, you know what, you matter a lot
Mhm.
and I care deeply about you. And that builds an environment where they know they feel loved, regardless of whether we come to the same conclusions or not. Who knows? The oldest is 13. I have no doubt they're going to get older and we're going to have our things that send them down a path. But I think one of the other practices that I personally, just from a worldview, come from, I'm really set on instilling truth in them and really trying to say, hey, how do you use discernment and how do you navigate a world where things are changing all the time? And that can be overwhelming. And that puts a lot of pressure on you as a person to go, do I need to conform to this or do I need to conform to that? And how do I try and keep up with that? And trying to help them understand, like, there are some timeless truths that you can hold to that regardless of the shifting seas or tides of society that you can hang on to. And I think that helps prepare them to critically analyze and evaluate the world they're living in. And how it plays out, I don't know, but I guess I can say I'm doing my best on it.
Keith and Di hanging out with Christopher Lynn, 2 dads in a lab trying to be 2% better. We're going to wrap up this episode and keep the conversation going for the next show with Chris Lynn. And Di, I want to hang on what Chris just said, which was really around this idea of keeping truths, both values, right, Chris? Like helping your kids understanding what the center is, what that value is. And as the world rapidly changing constantly, be centered in that truth.
Yep.
Chris, the
Yeah.
best.
Yeah. No, I think that's just it. I think that the values and the morals that I'm trying to establish in them, which again, even some of the things we talked about, which is you can disagree with someone
Mhm.
and that's okay, but you can still treat them with care and respect as a human being. And you don't need to tear them apart because they think differently about this than I do. Okay, that's fine, but they still matter and they're still important. And trying to really instill some of those things in them at a young age, I think, as I look at the world that is so divided right now, where it seems like people can't even have a conversation without it just flying into a rage. I think that's something I hope to see different in the way they grow.
Oh man, Chris, my kids can't stop seeing their dad be crying all the time because he meets these people every single day in the lab, and they come home and say, "Hey, Dad, who'd you meet today?" I'm like, "Oh my God, I met this person." And then I start crying all emotional because I had this heartfelt conversation with somebody because I'm loving the connection to humans. My kids are like, "Oh yeah, my dad loves humans." Yeah, I do. I'm hoping I'm teaching them the same thing, right? Those same values, right? Listen, let's take a pause, let's come back for the next episode, Chris Lynn, and let's dig into some fun topics, Chris Lynn. Travel, hotel, rentals, some of the things we asked Chad Hufford. I'm really curious about what going to Disneyland, staying in you guys take over a hotel room floor. Like, how does that all work? So let's come back, and we'll see Nation on the next episode. 2 Dads Lamp Driving 2% Better with Keith Phyllis, Di Manuel, and of course, Christopher Lynn.